I'd like to welcome Janet Clouston, who is a Newcastle artist. It's so wonderful to have you in this gallery. This is your first exhibition here.
Yeah, good to see you. Yeah.
I'd love you to talk to us about Dark, Dark Forest.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you very much for having me. And what do we want to know? Well, Dark, Dark Forest came from the idea that there's a dark forest on the internet, which I heard about, which is a bit like, it's about where everyone goes on the internet to hide. And the same, from a concept of how the world should be hiding, other worlds are hiding from us because we clearly savage out in space. And just the idea that there was little chat rooms that are dark and secret places where the predators hide. And from there, I sort of saw the correlation between the dark, dark forest and the burnt forest, the forest that we've suffered. And my work started when we had terrible fires and then terrible floods. And washing down the Hunter River came the forest, burnt. And I was picking up pieces of burnt driftwood, which just inspired me to start making the dark forest and making the burnt animals. And at the same time I was thinking, why is this happening? Why are we succumbing to, it's about power really, my interest in power and who has it and who doesn't have it, and how, because at the same time as all that fire and flood, we also had Black Lives Matter, Me Too, was all rushing in on us during COVID. And so the ideas, I started to see the connections between all those things, and it's really about who has power and how they abuse it. And I was really moved by a lot of this Me Too stories we were hearing and have always known about. And I was thinking about Greek myths and how it's part of our culture. It's been instilled in our culture for so long, and it seems like they will never end. And I started making the great men because we were, at the same time we were having the Harvey Weinstein scandals, and they keep coming. And so I started making Mr. Punch as the children's entertainer, the classic story of the wife beater. And then I moved on to, I think, the Greek gods and the Greek myths, which are just full of, it's very difficult to find a Greek myth that doesn't involve raping women, to put it that way. So we have Orion, who is the famous star god, he's up there in the stars, chasing the Pleiades, who are the seven sisters who begged their father to rescue them from the pursuit of Orion, and he whisked them up into the stars, and Orion chased them up there, and he's stalking them ever since. And then I witnessed also the idea of narcissism and Narcissus, so I made him with his dark shadows under his eyes, which comes from self-love, we all know. And he was also, inadvertently perhaps, but involved in the abduction of poor Persephone, when his beautiful flowers, the narcissus flowers, were presented for her to get lost in, and that's when the world opened up and she was carried away. And of course we have a dictator. So the dictator is, he's sort of, the classic idea of a dictator, but he was fun to a stitch, I suppose. And that idea of, Mr. Punch again. So,
And tell us how you've made the great men.
Well, I'm a menace to my husband. I pick stuff up off the roads, and he goes, "Oh God, what are you doing that for?" And somebody threw out a whole lot of Skittles, the big plastic Skittles. So I immediately saw that they had potential. So I brought them home, and much to my husband's horror, and so I had to quickly make them because otherwise he would think I was just storing more junk. And so I started on Mr. Punch first, I think, and So I got the basic skittle form, and these are bits of old bedhead, another thing that I scrounged off the road, and then I just cover them with what's that stuff? The fluff anyway, and then I just pad them out and stitch. And when I make them, I don't really cut patterns. I just sort of very vaguely, and then I just pull them all into shape later on the body. I'm too impatient to sort of scan, and I'd make it a lot easier for myself if I did. But I just want to start, and they're all hand stitched because my sewing machine wasn't working at this stage. So.
And you've used your mum's threads.
Yeah, well, my mum died, and she was an embroiderer, and so when she died, I inherited a lot of her embroidery materials and needles and things, and I felt I should honour them really. And
Janet, then you've got the impact on women, which you've called the great aunts.
Yeah. Well, I felt like once I'd done the great men, I thought, well, how do we answer them? And I thought, well, the great aunts, of course. Who doesn't have a wonderful great aunt who used to embroider quite often? And so I started, so they were, a lot of them, they started being the Greek goddesses. So, well, I think she was the first, actually, which isn't actually a goddess. I named her Vilima, and this one, Thaikla, because I was concerned. My mother and my sister both lost sons, and there's no word for women or parents who lose their children. And my sister told me actually that she felt that loss very deeply when she lost her son at the age of 17. And so I started with this one, and I've always just loved doodling faces. Like when I'm on the phone, I'll just be drawing faces all the time. So I just stitched freehand. I don't draw them on first, I just stitch them. And then I felt that she needed a bit of colour, so I just splotched some ink on, and then I did the sort of Rorschach test. It came out as this man with a gun, and that's how I think she became Vilima. And these little children that I've put on both of these are from the reading books Janet and John books that I learned to read from as a 5-year-old, and which unfortunately having a 5-year older brother, I got called Janet. So those were the first of the great aunts, and then I moved on to the goddesses. And so I had this harpy, because I was reading about basically how the patriarchy came into Greek myth and changed the goddess myths into a vilification of women and blame, and we see it in the Christian religion as well. Basically the sky gods were determined to repress the earth mother. And the harpies, who'd just been wind goddesses beforehand, suddenly became the most vilified of all women. And so that's why she's looking so sad. And then I think I made Cassandra. She was the goddess that she's not embroidered, she's made of paper mache and plaster. And she's based on I think the original form was a plastic container of some sort, which I built the plastic paper mache form over. She was based on Cassandra was raped by Agamemnon and abducted and murdered by Agamemnon's wife. But she was also the seer she could see into the future, and she always knew. She knew what the future would hold, and no one would listen to her. And I often feel that a lot of women feel like that. Me especially, I'm always telling people, you know it will happen, being a pessimist. And this is the great aunt Sybil, she was just a random face on a beautiful piece of driftwood, and she took on that, as I stitched her, she took on that rather wise but miserable looking, a bit like Cassandra. And that's what the painting is. The women are looking fearfully into the future, and nobody's listening.
Except one is looking backwards.
Well, she can't she can't bear to look. And that's how I feel nowadays when I look on the internet. I just can't bear to look. So this is the dark forest, which is the driftwood particularly. I started making the birds up on those wooden stilts, the animals that were basically burnt in the forest fires. And I've just recently been out into one of the worst burnt areas 2 years ago, and it's still very black, but it's coming back, but the loss of animals is pretty appalling. But it's even, it continues on the roadsides as well. But yeah.
And what's the relationship between the burnt forest and the great men? Well,
basically global warming is coming about. We're getting burned, we're getting the floods because of great men. Great men are determined to lie and cheat and tell all this, just go on exploiting the earth at the expense of our future. And that was the loss. That's when the goddess culture and other cultures, but cultures that worshipped Mother Earth, respected Mother Earth. And I don't have romantic ideas about a perfect time or anything like that, but we just don't respect. And it is, in the Bible it says, go forth and take the lot, and people do use that have had that mindset, and perhaps it's instinctive to humans, but I think it would be a lot better if we fought back against that.
Is that the message that you would like people to get?
Yeah, that is my idea. That is my message, really, is that we've lost, in repressing women, repressing half the world, repressing the poor. We are, and not considering animals as our equals. They have as much right to the planet as we, and yet only 4% of the wild animals exist. Most out of all the animals on the planet, including humans, I think, only 4% are wild animals. It's a pretty shocking statistic, and it's just it's sort of overwhelming sometimes when the fires come and burn people's houses out, and that's the least of it, because all these other animals also have their houses burnt out, and we aren't the only things on the planet. We don't have the only right to the planet, and we've taken it and we've cracked in our own nest, really.
So you've been working on this show for 2 years now.
At least, probably longer.
A bit longer. So how has it been for you sitting and stitching and obviously thinking about this quite deeply? How has that been for you?
I find the stitching is such a meditative experience that it sort of calms you at the same time as you're thinking about angry thoughts. It does, painting does it too, but just the doing, I suppose. My mum always used to talk about the meditation of embroidery. That's how she coped with the appalling state of the world. But I suppose that's the sort of combination of the making, as if the world needs more stuff, and that's why I make it all out of recycled materials and junk, because we don't need more stuff. And I've always been very politically concerned, and actually when I look back at my art school career, I started making work about power, even back then when I was a young woman, and it's always been an issue for me, the imbalance of power, and so my work at art school was about that, and it always has been, and just the lesser people, the overlooked, and the animals are part of that. The forest is considered less important than a great man. And we make such a fuss of the great famous people. It's the last thing we really need, is to celebrate these people who exploit us.
And Janet, what's next for you? Because you've sat in this place for quite some time.
Well, I sort of have, this was really a tiny little taste of what I wanted to do. I had a huge scheme. Because I was involved in theatre and theatre sets, and back in my young days I was involved in a sort of absurdist theatre group come band, and so we used to put on extravagant performances. We could put on a really splendid one once called The Lapse of the Gods, based on Italian opera, but all done with cardboard and make-up stuff. We think we charged sort of 50 cents a ticket or something. But so I've always had this theatrical, and then I've worked in children's theatre sets and props and puppets and costumes. So I always see things in terms of the installation. Even at art school I was doing installations. And so I don't see it in terms of individual works. And so it's sort of probably whatever's left over will go into the next bigger thing. So I keep working on it. So yeah. Because they were the big ones that my very original idea was to make a grand production, you know, like they were going to act performers in a theatre piece that I had planned, but I hadn't quite worked out. But yeah, that'll keep me going till 90. These are the Punch and Judies that there's a few around the gallery. Well, Mr. Punch is clearly, you know, the children's entertainer, and when you read about, I've got this fantastic little old book of Punch and Judy with telling us how wonderful it is for children. But if you look online for photographs of children enjoying Mr. Punch and Judy shows, they've got the most terrified expressions. And I remember it being pretty shocking when I was a child. So I just sort of, and there were sort of personal reasons why I did Punch and Judy as well, not my own physical experience, but I just felt that it was a good sort of parallel, you know, in real life to what I've been talking about. And so I made the dog, and as you can see the dogs on wheels, because they were going to be part of a different kind of a Punch and Judy show. And you know, he's a pit bull or a pit bulldog, because Mr. Punch would have a bulldog. And then I made the policeman, and the characters in Punch and Judy are pretty shocking, some of them.
Well, I think this is a fantastic exhibition. I'm so pleased to have you here at Timeless Textiles, Janet, so thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you for offering me the chance to show where I work, because I was not really sure that I'd find somewhere.
It's a great honour.
It's an honour for me too, thank you.